Danny Kruger.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I've enjoyed the debate. It's been very useful. We've heard some very important contributions from all sides, and I do welcome the constructive tone. I do think the comments made by the honourable member who just spoke do reflect a Labour government committed to ever increasing public spending, while they also make simultaneous complaints about the high tax burden that the country labours under, without any commitments to reduce taxes further than we're doing so, in fact just ever increasing spending commitments. Very happy to.
Remember, clarify just where in what I said. I said I asked for increased spending. Would the honourable member set that out now for the benefit of the House?
Well, we heard repeated complaints about the underfunding of services and the requirement for improvements. So I think that's what the honourable lady believes in. If she's happy to say she doesn't believe in additional spending, I'm delighted to hear it, if that's what she wants to say.
Thank you once again for giving me. As the honourable member knows, we have set out our spending commitments, and the crumbling services are a consequence of Tories' absolute failure to give growth to our country and to our fantastic businesses that can drive economic growth across our country.
Repeated investments in public services, but I recognise there are all sorts of problems across our country. There's also, speaking of crumbling, a major hole in the public finance plans of the party opposite, following yesterday's budget. So we look forward to seeing how they're going to plug the new hole in their plans. But Madam Deputy Speaker, I made the remarks because I think that there is actually a common recognition across the House that improvements need to be made to our economy. There have been significant challenges to the UK in recent years. I think we heard yesterday, and I'm very pleased to hear them, some significant improvements are now underway, inflation falling, wages rising, mortgage rates are starting to come down, and debt is on track to fall, all of which is welcome. And I very much welcome the combination of the autumn statement and the budget yesterday, which together have seen cuts to national insurance totaling 20 billion, benefiting the average worker by over £900. And then when we come to the self-employed as well, combined with the tax cuts we had at the autumn statement, a tax cut of around £650 for the average self-employed person. So these is all very welcome. I do recognise the points about fiscal drag. I think we've got to acknowledge the reality there. But given that the thresholds haven't been raised, I think it is really welcome to see these tax reductions. And I particularly welcome the commitments that have been made, the changes that are being promised to the high-income child benefit charge by raising the threshold there. I think that's a very important step that's been made, halving the rate at which child benefit is withdrawn, which will benefit some families by an average of £1,260, which is very, very welcome. And also the commitment to end the unfairness for single earner families altogether by April 2026. These are very significant developments, which I welcome. And I particularly welcome the extension of the Household Support Fund, which I have been calling for on behalf of Wiltshire Council, which I want to pay tribute to for the really good work that they do in supporting households in need with essentials such as food and utilities. I think this is a really important development. And there was an interesting suggestion made, I think, by the chairman of the DWP, the Work and Pension Select Committee, that the Household Support Fund should be permanent. And I recognise that there are voices on our side of the House which think that it's only a stick and plaster measure that should only be in place during these difficult times. I actually rather agree with the chairman of the Select Committee. I think it is important to ensure that local authorities have discretionary funding that they can use in the way that they do. They should be accountable to their local residents for how they use that money. I'd like to see that money raised locally as well. But I think the principle of a discretionary fund that local government has is an important one. Madam Deputy Speaker, there are obviously still significant concerns about the state of the economy, and I'm concerned somewhat by the obeisance, the genuflection that the Chancellor feels obliged to make towards the Office of Budget Responsibility. I recognise that I think he would have liked to have done more in this budget if it wasn't for the sense that the OBR wouldn't allow him. I think it's the wrong way round when we are outsourcing responsibility for fiscal forecasting in this way to an unaccountable body. And I think that it's wrong that he regards the only measure of success for the budget whether the OBR gives it a green light or not. Fundamentally, we are restricting the reforms that we need to do in this country. And I want to, Madam Deputy Speaker, come on briefly to a broader concern. I welcome the budget. I think all of the measures in it are very, very good and helpful. But there remain profound, powerful structural problems with model of our economy, all of which started, by the way, before we came into power. And this is a cross-party responsibility. Liberal Democrats, Conservatives, Labour, all responsible for the structure of the economy that we operate under in this country. And I will describe that briefly in these terms. We have cheap money, decades of artificially low interest rates followed by money printing from the Bank of England that went on too long, creating chronic asset inequality in our country and essentially a transfer of wealth from poor to rich. We've had cheap labour, which is the low wages, creating low wages and pressure on housing, public services and community cohesion caused by importing millions of people on low wages to work in our economy from abroad. And we have an economy built on cheap imports. We burden our own producers with costs while we import cheap material, cheap products made to lower standards from abroad. I regret all of these conditions in our economy. The result is huge geographic inequality, a long tail of unproductive businesses, and I'm afraid too low real terms wage growth. And all of this, I suggest, is endemic to the economy made by Labour, made by 2008, but not sufficiently addressed over the last decade and a half by the government that Conservatives have led. And so I think we fixed the damage that was done to the public finances under Labour, and imagine what Labour would have done if they'd been in power after 2010. We fixed the damage to the public finances, but we didn't change the economic model. Now I'm glad to see that this budget indicates that the government is committing to reforms in the right direction. Particularly welcome the recognition that debt will fall during the next Parliament, if we're in charge, of course. It's impossible to see how the opposition will get debt falling without policies to drive growth and improve public sector output. So that's a good commitment. I also welcome the commitment to improve public sector productivity, and my honourable friend from the Cotswolds made some very important points about the way we need to improve output and efficiency in the NHS. And I particularly welcome the focus on improving private saving and investment. And I want to quickly mention the Wiltshire economy, if I may, Madam Deputy Speaker, where we have in my wonderfully beautiful, traditional, old-fashioned looking county, in fact some of the most high-tech businesses in the UK producing really innovative products for the global economy. It's a highly positive story is developing in Wiltshire, particularly led by the agri-tech sector, which is one of the great benefits that we can have with our new Brexit freedoms to liberalise and enhance the opportunities for biotech and agri-tech. But we need more, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'll quickly run through what I think those things are. I welcome the minor improvement in the uplift in the VAT threshold of £5,000. I regret we couldn't do more, and I particularly regret the reason we couldn't do more is, as I understand it, because of the Windsor framework. We were effectively tied into the EU's VAT regime in the UK because we don't want to diverge from Northern Ireland, quite rightly, here in GB. But I regret that we couldn't raise the VAT threshold significantly more than £90,000. We should do that, and we should find a way to make that possible. Secondly, and other honourable members have made the point powerfully, we need to grow our house building, our rates of house building very significantly. I'd like to see more new towns being created. I'd like to see land reform to get the cost of the land out of the price of housing. That seems to be the fundamental blocker, particularly on housing in rural areas. We should be greatly enhancing and expanding the role of community land trusts, which have such a useful role, I think, to play, not just in urban settings, but in rural settings too, to create low-cost, affordable housing for local families. And we need to reform the labour market, and today's debate about enhancing the world of work is so timely and relevant to the reforms the government is trying to bring about. And I welcome all that the Secretary of State for DWP, who I met with this week, is doing to get more people into work. We have a chronic problem with economic inactivity. Millions of people not being able to contribute to the economy and to contribute to their own prosperity significantly. Major disincentives to work and train, fuelled by our high migration economy, which is simply a subsidy to employers at the expense of working people. And mention has been made of GDP per capita, which of course is the fundamental measure. It's very good that the government is focusing on that, despite, as members opposite have pointed out, the poor record of GDP per capita in recent years. And the reason we have that poor record is fundamentally, and there are lots of reasons, but the primary one in my view, is the high rate of migration, which of low-skilled, low-paid workers, which have driven down the cost, the contributions and the income per capita. So I welcome the work that the government is doing to get people from benefits into employment, particularly the Well Work programme. And I'll finish, Madam Deputy Speaker, with my own plea, and again on behalf of Wiltshire and indeed of the whole country, which is what I regret more than anything in the budget, is the slow uplift in the frankly insignificant uplift that we've seen in defence spending. It is a good thing that more money is now going into the defence budget. I welcome the commitments that have been made in recent budgets. I'd hoped for more yesterday. Less than 1% increase in defence budget at the time with the crisis that the world is in, and the historic underfunding over many governments of our armed forces. It would be a great thing for the nation. It would be a great thing for Wiltshire. I'm proud to represent the largest garrison in the British Army on Salisbury Plain. I'd like us to see significant investments in the Army, which will be necessary for our security, and it will also boost our economy. Thank you.
We will try a formal time limit of 8 minutes.